Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, I was always told I had a voice radio, so today I'm bringing you a quite interesting, intriguing, fascinating, alternate format game. Now, do not turn this video off. I'm going to give you 2 reasons you should watch this. Number 1, these are interesting, entertaining games that will make you think about things you haven't usually had a chance to think about, and, you know, watching them will make you better at the Pokémon Trading Card Game, as well as entertain you. And number 2, this tournament was stacked with Worlds players. Over half of the Masters here have their invitation for Worlds, and on the videos I'm showing you, there is just one player who does not have their invitation for Worlds. Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's fascinating. Now, the format is Breakthrough, Breakpoint and Fates Collide commons and uncommons. No rares and no cards that aren't from those 3 sets. Don't worry, I've done some extra editing, so this video is going to be very easy to watch because all the cards you need to know about will be appearing on screen as we go. And I cannot say any nicer and fairer than that. I should also mention here that we are playing with 40 card decks, not 60. We are playing 4 prizes, not 6. And you are only allowed 2 copies of each card, other than basic energy, rather than 4. We are playing best of 3, 30 minutes. I assure you it is long enough. And we are playing top cut timing rules. There are no ties. And if that is not a reason to watch, I don't know what is. Grab a cold beverage, sit down tight. This is going to be awesome. Okay, so continuing our theme of good players, on the left we have got to Mal Cameron. He top cut Worlds back in 2013. He is our reigning UK national champion. He's been to Worlds every year, I want to say since 2012. He's on a bit of a run, shall we say. On the right we have got Nick Pierce. He runs the YouTube channel Xanadu TCG, and he starts straight off with a Team Rocket's trickery here. Flip a coin, flip 2 coins for each head to discard 2 cards from the top of your opponent's deck. Unfortunately, hits double tails and nothing doing. A little bit upsetting. And Nick, like Joe in the previous round, was part of the European Pokémon Trading Card Game commentary team for Pokémon at UK, German and Italian Nationals this past summer. So, 2 pretty esteemed players. So, to Mal here, he started off with a Heatmor. We saw Reese using Heatmor in the previous game. Heatmor does 20 damage for a single energy, 40 if there's a tool attached, although we know he's going to be looking for a Fighting Fury belt so that he can go ahead and do 50 damage for a single energy. That would be nice. Plays a Shauna on turn 1. He's going to get himself a hand refresh, a new 5 cards. Now, Shauna's one of those cards that in regular format, it's fine if a little underwhelming. But when you're drawing 5 cards from a 40 card deck, all of a sudden it becomes pretty tasty. Now, it's not a Fighting Fury belt, but that's okay. He's going to do 40 damage here. But if Nick... Sorry, Nick. If Nick attacks that Heatmor, he's going to take 6 damage counters. So that's going to essentially be 100. It's not enough to KO 120 HP Gramble, but it's a decent start. Now, Nick here, he's going to be looking for a Gramble and an energy. Gramble's got the attack Tantrum for 3 energy, double colorless and a fairy, 120 damage, and you are confused. So, can he get it? Now we see Tiano of all cards draw 3 cards. Tiano is not a great card, but again, when you take a 60 card deck down to a 40 card deck, drawing 3 cards draws you a larger proportion of your deck, and hence actually becomes fairly playable. It becomes alright. So he draws 3 cards down. Now he hasn't put down the Granbull yet, which is unfortunate. He's going to be looking for that, but although he does have the Granbull, does he have the energy? Now he can use Startling Bark. Flip a coin, if heads, choose 3 random cards from your opponent's hand, and they shuffle that into their deck. It's not a particularly good attack, but it's better than Nout. Now he puts a Rainbow Energy on Durant. Now there is a heads. So he's going to choose 3 random cards, put them back into Tamal's deck. No, it says choose 3 random cards. Oh, your opponent does reveal them. Okay. Just double checking they were supposed to be revealed. So it does maybe give a little bit of information you can use there. Now, that's not bad. Puts Tamao on a 1-card hand. Oh, would you believe it? That 1 card is a Tierno. Now, just so we're clear, and does he draw? He draws a double colourless and a heavy ball. So not the end of the world here. He's got some things to work with. You should remember that Bursting Balloon only puts those 6 damage counters if you're damaged from an attack. So doing that attack there doesn't actually... Because Startling Bark didn't do any damage, you don't take the damage counters from that Bursting Balloon. So maybe a nice little option there. Now, I'm not saying it was better than doing that 120 damage and getting the KO. Of course it wasn't, but it's better than Nout. Now, we do see a Bent Spoon coming down onto that Heatmor, and that means that all effects of attacks other than damage don't actually get done, which is quite handy. Now, we do see a Kangaskhan coming down there. We saw that in the previous game. 40 for 2 energy, 100 for 4. Not entirely useless. Not amazing, but not entirely useless. And we do see a Stunfisk on the bench. We'll talk about him in a moment. But we see another 40 damage there onto the Granbull. He's chipping away. Another 40 damage will be enough to get the KO on that Granbull. And of course, that Kangaskhan on the bench with a double colourless is already doing 40 damage as a matter of course, so it will add up to 120 and get the KO next turn. Not terrible. So we know Tamao's got the return KO here. He does promote the Stunfisk, but that Stunfisk, it's got a Floatstone, it's got free retreat. Now, for a Lightning and a colourless, 100 damage if you had a Pokemon KO'd the previous turn. And in this format, that'll KO something like a Pinsir or a Heatmor or things of that nature. And for 2 Lightning and a colourless, 80 damage, discard an energy. Let's be clear, Stunfisk is in this deck for revenge. That's what it's going for. Now, we do see a Pokemon Catcher coming here, if Nick can keep the die on the table. And it's a Heads, and it's a Heatmor. He is going for a bit of the old Durant here. Scrape down 2 energy. If you've got damage counters on him, discard the top 4 cards of your opponent's deck. And the Rainbow Energy put 10 damage on. Oh, he loses both his Max Elixir there. Now, if Tamao cannot get... Oh, there's a Giovanni to draw an extra 4 cards. If he's got a tool and a Fire Energy, he'll actually be doing enough damage for the KO. Or he can use a Floatstone or a double colourless to retreat. But otherwise, he's going to be stuck in the active. And that's what Nick wants here. That's why Nick played the Pokemon Catcher. You try and strand the Durant in the active, the Heatmor, sorry, in the active, so that you can just mill 4 cards every turn. Let's not forget, Durant is an ant and Heatmor's an anteater. Heatmor is the natural enemy of the Durant. So it's a bit risky leaving him there in the active. The other cool thing this does is if Tamao doesn't get a Fire Energy, then Durant can't attack, and even if Tamao retreats into the Kangaskhan, he's only doing 40 damage, 50 with a Fighting Fury bout. He won't have enough to get the KO, and we know there are no Max Elixirs coming down to get the 4th energy to do 100 with Kangaskhan, because Nick mills both the Max Elixir. To put it another way, the only way that Tamao gets a KO next turn is with a Fire Energy. There is no other chance for Tamao to get a KO. And if Tamao doesn't get a KO, that is another 4 cards milled from the top of Tamao's deck by that Durant. That Durant is working on 12 cards being discarded. Now, they did all get discarded in one go. I didn't see exactly what they were, but there was a Shauna. Oh, okay, there we go. There's the Fire Energy. There's the Bursting Balloon. Just so he's got a tool attached now and does 80. And that will be enough to get the KO. The 40 without the tool wouldn't have been enough. And it's a bit risky for Nick to be sitting there playing around with those Durants. because, like I say, they will not stand up to much of a beating from those Heatmors. Now, the other thing is that those Snubbles are going to get KO'd pretty easily by Kangaskhan. Now, Nick here, he's got a bit of a hybrid deck going on. He can smash and KO with Granbull, or he can do a bit of the milling. We saw he plays the Team Rocket's Trickery, and we saw he plays the Durant. But it's not a straight mill deck. There are cards like Coughing, for instance, he can use to mill. Or he can play things like Snorlax just to tank. Snorlax 120 HP reduces damage done by 30 with his ability, and you can even put a Fighting Fury Belt to make him proper tanky. I did that. Gonna be honest, it wasn't very good, but it wasn't Snorlax's fault. I let Snorlax down. So there comes the Granbull, there goes the energy, but the problem is, Nick's not getting a KO this turn. He would need a Max Elixir and a double colourless, and Max Elixir only hits basic energy on the bench, not stage 1 in the active. So he has to pass the turn, and this does give Tamal the chance to have a free hit on Granbull. The only saving grace is that Tamal plays a Judge. There was a scenario where Tamal, and he does play it, we've seen him play it. If Tamal were to have gone Fighting Fury Belt Giovanni's energy, he could then retreat the Heatmor. He's already got 2 energy, so he's got enough energy on the Heatmor to retreat. Then he can go ahead and play the... He would then be able to go ahead and, just use a 4 energy attack with the Giovanni's, goes up to 120. He wouldn't actually need the Fighting Fury Bout. That would be irrelevant. Fighting Fury Bout on its own puts him up to 110. Giovanni's on its own puts up to 120. You wouldn't need both. But that's beyond the point. There was a scenario here where Tamal gets the KO. Oh, and we see after the Judge, he's got the Giovanni's in hand. So we see and he's got the Float Stone there. Now, what he does not want to do is retreat the Heatmor this turn. Oh, now he's got the Fighting Fury Bout, he can. Because Granbull does 120 damage and Kangaskhan's got 120 HP. So retreating and saying, hey, come and knock out my best Pokemon, not the soundest plan in the book. Not something we would want to be doing there. So, Nick's in an awkward position here. Because I don't see where Nick goes. I don't see how Nick wins this game. Because Nick, and we did see he used a Super Rod earlier in the game, so he was able to recover a Snubble. I believe he got a Snubble, a Granbull, and a Fairy Energy, if I remember correctly. Because, oh, that's a fun little card. There's the Assault Vest and a Judge. Now, the Assault Vest reduces damage done by Pokemon with special energy attached by 40, which means that Kangaskhan will be doing 100, minus 40 for the Assault Vest is 60, plus 10 for the Fighting Fury Bout is 70, add the 40 damage already on the Granbull, would put him up to 110 damage in total, which wouldn't be enough to get the KO. He's got 120 HP. The problem is, Granbull is now confused. Not ideal. So, that means that, and for those that have forgotten confusion, for any newer players watching, I'm hoping Pokemon Go has got new players playing the trading card game, and I'm hoping those new players are finding their way over to PTCG Radio. If you know any new players who are playing because of Pokemon Go, etc., do send them my way. I'd be awfully appreciative. When you're confused, if you attack, you flip a coin. If tails, you do 30 damage to yourself. If heads, you attack as normal. Now, you can play the Heavy Boots card. It's a tool that puts your HP up if you've got free retreat or higher, and means you can't be confused. Or you can play Chaos Tower. It's another one of those double-sided stadiums, which means that, well, one side of Chaos Tower says that you cannot be confused or... confused or poisoned. So you can use that to make sure you can't be confused. The other side is you cannot be asleep or paralyzed. Now, Nick instead goes for the Fairy Garden. That gives free retreat to all Pokemon with Fairy energy attached as he plays a Judge, so both players shuffle their hand and get 4 new cards. So the ideal there is to attack with 1 Granbull, retreat into another. The problem is he hasn't got another Granbull ready to go. And even if he uses the attack and flips heads, he's only doing 120 damage, which would ordinarily be enough to KO a Kangaskhan. But remember that Fighting Fury bout, and I feel like I've said that phrase so many times in these first 2 videos it's getting a bit silly, puts an extra 40 HP on any basic Pokemon to whom it is attached. Which means that Kangaskhan goes up to 160 HP, and Granbull is no longer able to get a one-hit KO. Boo, hiss, etc. But with nothing else to do, he might as well flip. Is he going to do it? It's a Tails. Little bit sad. So, Nick there, his attack does nothing, and he takes 30 damage for his troubles. That is not what he wanted to do. Takes 30 damage, doesn't use his attack, and now Kangaskhan can come in, do 110 damage, which will put the Granbull up to 190 in total, which will comfortably do enough. Sorry, he will actually only be doing 70 damage, which will put him up to 150, which will still be enough. I forgot about the Assault Vest. Kangaskhan still has a double colourless attached, Granbull still has an Assault Vest attached, but even the 60 plus 10 for the Fighting Fury about putting it up to 70 will be enough. 80 plus 70, 150, he will get the KO here. And that's going to put Tamao down to 1 prize. And there's really very little Nick's got. Even if he had a Granbull ready to go, he cannot get the KO next turn, because he can only do, I mean, even with a Giovanni's, he'd only be doing 140. Giovanni's allowed you to do an extra 20 damage. Or draw until you got 5 cards in your hand. You get a choice. Whoop, whoop. Nick's not getting a win. Or, okay, let me be more specific. Nick's not getting a KO next turn. Tamao is getting a KO this turn, which means Tamao is going to be down to a single prize remaining with a Kangaskhan ready to do 110 damage. Oh! He is getting a win. I am an idiot, ladies and gentlemen. Nick wins the game. And I apologise, both to you as listeners and viewers. I know some people more listen than watch if they're doing other things. And to Nick as a player. I told you Nick's deck did 2 things. It decked out and it attacked. And I was focusing on the Granbull attack, but that was very silly of me. Nick there played a double Puzzle of Time, went ahead and grabbed a Rainbow Energy, attached it to the Durant, which meant Durant had damage on, which means he milled 4 cards, but I believe there were only 2 left in Tamao's deck, which means that Tamao was unable to draw a card at the beginning of his turn, and one of the win conditions in the Pokemon Trading Card Game is your opponent being unable to draw a card at the beginning of their turn. So that was beautifully played by Nick. What I should have said, being pedantic, and anyone who watches this regularly will know I am a big fan of pedantry. What I should have said is, there is no way Nick is going to win this game by taking 4 prizes. But you don't need to. Deck out was a bit of a thing in this tournament, between things like Durant and Team Rocket's trickery, and what Nick could actually have done, and if he hadn't been guaranteed to win with Durant, he could have, I mean, he didn't actually announce what he was getting with his double Puzzle of Time. We did, Tamao knew that he was going for the Rainbow Energy and that would guarantee the win. But he could have actually gone for Team Rocket's trickery there, and he could potentially, would only have needed 1 heads out of 2, which is a 75% chance, and he would have actually milled all of Tamao's deck without using Durant's attack. So, I hope that made sense. Good on Nick. And this is what makes these players so good. They're looking for different ways to win. It's not just, I'm going to knock out 4 of my opponent's Pokemon and win. It's, I am going to win in any way that I can. And we saw there was no way that Nick was going to win that game by taking 4 prizes. Well, you know what? Nick didn't need to. So now Tamao starts off, he gets the Floatstone on the Kangaskhan, the Fighting Fury Bout and the Energy on the Heatmor. He played a Shauna. That's not a bad turn 1 setup. Now we see the Fairy Garden coming down from Nick. He's got the Snubble in the active, and he is going to be... I mean, he really wants to set up some Grambles. The problem is, of course, that Tamao is now going to be putting on very, very quick pressure from very early on in the game. Now, we do see a Bridget coming down there. Bridget allows you to search for free basic Pokemon, or I believe 1EX, and put them onto your bench. So they go straight on the bench, and there's 2 Durants and a Snubble. But of course there are. Why would it be anything else? They're the 2 Pokemon he needs. And he's already got a Snubble in the active, and he can only play 2 of each. Oh, that was a little bit cheeky. Tamao just put a double colourless energy on Heatmor, and just went ahead and did 70 damage, well 80 with the Fighting Fury belt, and just went ahead and got the KO straight away. Which, as previously mentioned, little bit cheeky. Snubble had 70 HP. I think it had 70 HP. The Breakthrough has 70. The Fates Collide have 70. I believe... I'm trying to figure out which one that is. I want to say it's the Breakthrough Snubble. No, it's definitely not the Breakthrough Snubble. It's the Fates Collide Snubble. Either way, they've got 70 HP. So we saw a judge coming down there from Nick. The problem is there was little Nick could do. So he popped a double colourless energy on the Gramble, got ready for this turn. But we're back in the same position we were in the previous game. Tamao is up in prizes. And Nick's not done very much of anything. The thing in the previous game was Nick was able to... He had that Durant, he used the Pokemon Catcher, he milled a bunch of cards. So although Tamao took the early lead, the fact that Nick had gone ahead and milled a bunch of cards made a huge difference. Now Tamao's taken 2 prizes, Nick's taken 0 prizes, and Tamao's got a greatly increased number of cards in his deck. So here we see 80 damage coming down on the Gramble, and now we're in the same situation we were in the previous game. Nick's coming down to a coin flip. Now, regardless of the result of said coin flip, we are going to see a KO on the Gramble, because whether he hits heads or not, that Kangaskhan is going to come in and do a bit of a old Kangaskhan smash and get a KO. He can do 40 damage just with Tiny Punch with his first attack, which is going to be enough to KO the old 120 HP Granbull. Now, Nick here, he could go ahead and hit a Max Elixir, use Durant to discard the top 4 cards of Tamao's deck, because he then have the 2 energy and the damage counter on Durant. But the problem is, I'm not really seeing how that wins Nick the game here. Now, I know I said that in the previous game, and I know I was wrong. But I was being terribly short-sighted. I am on the ball. I am laser-focused right now. And look at the size of Tamao's deck. It's huge. There's loads of cards there. And I don't think Nick is going to be able to mill that in enough time. Now, the one thing that really helped Nick in the previous game was that he played the Pokemon Catcher on the benched Heatmor, and Tamao was unable to get it out the active or find a Fire Energy with which to attack. That gave Nick 8 cards, or as I like to put it, a large proportion of Tamao's deck. And that's 20% of Tamao's deck. Just with 1 Durant. That made a heck of a difference. Tamao's now down to 1 prize, and I don't really see any way back for Nick, because Tamao needs to take 1 more prize. There's a Durant in the active. He's got 60 HP remaining. Now, the other thing that Tamao's done, and Tamao's made 2 adjustments from the previous game, which are really doing him well. Firstly, no bench, and I think that's just a concession there from Nick. He sees he can't win. The one thing he did was he didn't put a bench Pokemon that could be captured to allow Nick to repeat his Durant trick. The other thing he did, you saw he was building up that Kangaskhan on the bench without double colourless energy. Nick had an Assault Vest on that Durant, which reduces damage done by Pokemon with special energy attached by 40. Which may have saved Durant. Although it wouldn't actually, because you still could have done 60 with the second attack. 100 minus 40 is 60, plus the 10 that has to be on Durant to mill is 70. But either way, Tamao was making sure that Kangaskhan was not going to be beaten by an Assault Vest. Now, if you're watching this game and thinking, hang on a second, both those mats are spectacular. Well, they were both drawn by the lovely Miss Fiddlesticks Customs. I shall stick a link down in the description. If you want one of those mats, follow that link. Get in touch and go, yo, I want a mat. If you say, yo, PTCG Radio sent me, she'll give you 10% off because she's lovely. And those mats are spectacular. I will be getting one of those myself with PTCG Radio written on, obviously, because why would I not? Look at them. They're amazing. I'm not saying you have to buy them. You make that decision yourself. I just want to point out how cool they are. But if you want one, there's a link in the description that you can follow to go ahead and get one. So, we are starting off. There's a Heatmor against a Snubble. Is anybody else getting Deja Vu? Now, here's the good thing Nick's got here. He's got a turn to set up. He is going first. Now we know that Tamao's going to get the first attack, and he can get a KO. Either with a Redonkulous turn 1 Kangaskhan. Now it would involve a double colourless energy, 2 max elixirs, and a floatstone, assuming we have a Kangaskhan on the bench, but it's doable. The other thing he can do is energy Fighting Fury Belt Giovanni's Scheme, both of which would get a KO on the Snubble. But assuming that doesn't happen, both are possible but unlikely, Nick can go ahead here and he can either get a Durant on the bench with 1 energy ready to attach to second and start milling, or he can do what he's done, attach a DCE to the Snubble, and next turn he can go Fairy Energy, Granbull, and there we go. Ooh! Does he have Giovanni's Scheme? If he does, this game is over. Ah, I mean, it was a lot to ask for. We see there, he drew the Giovanni Scheme, and we saw from the reaction of Tamao there, he knew he had the win with that Giovanni Scheme. Had that been a Giovanni Scheme, the game would already be over. That should be 50 damage, not 40. Assuming, there we go. They've spotted it themselves. 20 damage, plus 20 because there's a tool attached, plus 10 just because 10 more damage with a Fighting Fury Belt. We see Pokemon Catcher coming down, trying to strand that Kangaskhan in the active. It's not going. Now, Nick needs a Granbull here. Or else he loses next turn. If he's got Granbull energy, and again, he still can't get the KO on the Heatmor. And I'm fairly sure Nick plays Heavy Boots. I haven't seen the Heavy Boots yet. We see a Heavy Ball there. Allows you to search for any Pokemon with a retreat cost of 3. That's 1, 2, 3 or higher. Which is just nicer than Ultra Ball. Because Ultra Ball, you've got to discard 2 cards to search for any Pokemon. In a deck like this, it's quite nice. Especially when you're playing Skylar and you're able to search out that Heavy Ball. So, good job, Nick. You've got the Granbull. He's got the energy. He might as well attack. There's the Assault Vest. I still would rather it was a Heavy Boots. I'm sure I thought I saw an energy in his hand. I might be seeing things, ladies and gentlemen. I'd hope he's got one. Because if not, he ain't getting an attack this turn. Ah, we go. There's the Fairy Energy. 120 damage, and would you believe it? He's going to be confused. Just for a change. The other thing about confusion, it doesn't, like poison, like burn, it doesn't go away. There's no way to get rid of it other than take that Granbull out of the active spot. Otherwise, that Granbull will sit there and be confused for the entirety of the game. And Nick has not had great luck. Although I suppose to have great luck, you've basically got to hit heads on every single one, which Nick has not been doing. Hey-ho. I believe in you, Nick. Nick should watch this video back. Nick's a good chap. Nick tends to... Nick is a friend of PTCG Radio, I would say. Although, you know, I know Tamao's visited on 1 or 2 occasions as well. Let's not do him a disservice here. So, once again, we saw Nick pull off the improbable win game 1. He got the catcher, he got the milling with Durant, he got the double puzzle of time to get the win at the end. But I'm getting the feeling in this game, and I don't want to sound rude or mean or any connotation of it like along those lines. I am getting the sense here that in a full game, Nick isn't going to win. It just seems like Tamal's got too much here, especially when he puts a Fighting Fury bout on to put them out of the range of Granbull. It just doesn't seem like Nick's going to win. Game 1, Tamal decked out. Game 2 and 3, Tamal's been in complete control, start to finish. Oh, we see a delinquent. Discard 3 cards from your hand and discard any stadium in play. So Nick drops a delinquent to get rid of Tamal's entire hand. Now, it would be much better. Oh, and there's a Tails, and Tamal gets the KO anyway. I was going to say, it would have been much better if he'd have done that when Tamal wasn't entirely set up. So a nice little game there again from both those players. I enjoyed that. I love these games. If I didn't think they were worth watching, guys, I wouldn't put them up. I ain't going to waste your time. That would be mean. Now, you know the deal. There's a comment section. Use it. There's a like button. Use it. There's a subscribe button. Use it. And if you have, get a friend subscribe on your behalf. As I've said, Pokemon Go is making Pokemon cool again. Maybe you've got friends who are just getting into Pokemon again. Just stick them onto my channel. Go, yo, I know this cool channel, PTCG Radio. It's got videos. You might like them. Spread the love, ladies and gentlemen. Spread the love. And, of course, by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you to Joanna and Glenn and all at Sutton Coldfield Pokemon Club for their help. I very much appreciate it. Look after yourselves until next time. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.